Hello and welcome to something completely different from what I usually do. So, usually I do Let's Plays. And this is not technically a Let's Play. It is, as the title of the video suggests, a subjective listing and review of the artwork of Gems of War. I believe this is technically a mobile game, but I am obviously not playing it on mobile. I am playing it on my PlayStation 4. So, why now? Well, a big part of it is, let me just go up here. So yes, as you can see, I don't have all the troops that are available in this game yet. In fact, I am missing about 250. So, why now? Rather than trying to obtain all the extra 250 units and then show them off. Well, the thing is, this game is continuously being updated and adding new troops. Some you have to basically pay for, other that are extremely rare. This is a free-to-play game. But, seeing as that is the case, and I don't always acquire a new troop every week, so, and even then, that would still be quite a long time to wait. And I had time to spare and figured, why not? Also, I needed a break from the Elder Scrolls Online for a bit, so, what? Thanksgiving gem sale. Sure, why? Don't really care about that. So, let's go to the meat of it all. Now, because 808 is a lot, this is going to be a long video, so I hope you're strapped in. Obviously, this is subjective. So, yeah. Now, hold on, let me just... the music is nice, but... yeah, there we go. I think that's better. I couldn't really hear myself talk, and that's gonna... if I am to go through all 808 that I have, that's gonna be a long one, especially when it's just the same piece of music that's just looped over and over and over. I would go insane. Well, more than I perhaps already am. So, I am going to judge these pieces of artwork from a couple of things. The first thing is perhaps the most subjective, and that is this piece of art objectively good? Does it contain many shades? Does it contain pure lines? Now, I'm not an artist. This is purely my subjective opinion on each piece of artwork's quality. So, a very detailed character will obviously score higher if they are meant to be. Like, if it's meant to be a very simple character and they look like that, you can still make a simple character detailed. Another thing to judge them by. Now, obviously, with this many monsters and creatures and backgrounds, there are multiple artists. And I don't know who the artists are. I haven't looked it up, and I'm not going to look it up because, honestly, I don't really care. This is about the artwork. If an artist feels targeted, well, art is subjective. Some people like the Mona Lisa, other people don't. And it's exactly the same with Gems of War monsters. Although the comparison is a bit stretched and far out, the idea is essentially the same. Next up is, I'm going to judge them depending on how well they fit into their overall theme. Now, in Gems of War, monsters can be slotted into an sort of home army where they're from. They can be slotted into a type of creature. So for example, you have here is a demon, and here you have a human and a mystic, so essentially a race and a class. Some only has one, some has two. I don't think any of them has three just yet. The levels and such they really don't care about that. I could go and look into how useful is each monster in battle. Well, battle is the standard match 3 and 4 is good, 5 is better, go on. But seeing as I don't know all the cards, I'm not going to do that. This is purely about the visual. Does the art look good? And does it fit in with monsters that are supposedly similar? The final thing that I will be judging them on is their naming and description scheme. Now, in the old days, I say that, I mean, I don't know when it changed, but when I started playing this, every single card had some kind of punny description. See here, like Acolyte. More Acolytes acquired. Only high-functioning sociopath need apply. Now, I think at some point they stopped doing that for every single card, so that's kind of unfortunate, but I'm definitely going to be going into looking at the naming scheme and see what is going on. So, we have 3 categories. We have the overall art style, we have the theming, and we have the name/description. So, let's get started. Now, as I said, this is going to be a long video, and yes, I will do some cutting and editing, which is probably going to take quite a while given how long this video is going to be, but this is going to be one video. Right, so from the top, and we'll go alphabetically because that's how it's already set up with the sorting system here. You can go in and alter the sorting system. I generally don't do that. I just run through them and see if there's something that I need to upgrade. So, first up is Abhorath. Now we can actually go in and see the image in full if we press L1 on the PlayStation controller. But first, let's take a look at the naming and descriptions. And I'm going to, for names and descriptions, I'm going to go up to 5. 5 is the best, so it can maximum attain 5 as its maximum score in that category. For theming, I'm going to go up to 10, and the same goes for the art quality in general. So, let's see what the naming says, since this is one of those that do has a name and that do have a description and a name. So Abhorath is essentially a demon, kind of Cthulhu-esque. I like it. That's good. Okay, the old gods are so last year. That's pretty good. And Abhorath definitely sounds Cthulhu-esque, which might not fit with the demon, but the whole categories are a bit vague. You'll see that when we get further down the line. Perhaps they could have used more ranks, more classes. That's not up to me, but I like the sort of last year old gods. So basically, yeah, also going for the Cthulhu mythos here. I'm going with a 4 because it's not as punny as it could be. Like, you could go for something like a pun on the name, abhorrently, or something like that. That's really the only downside there is to its name. So it gets a 4 in the name and description parts. Okay, we can't really say much about this description right now, because this is the first card. But I'm going to anyway, because obviously I know these cards fairly well. I don't know how they are in battle, but I don't know the artwork, because I have been scrolling through and basically up to sort of as a preparation for this video. Right. Okay, so that doesn't give us the entire picture, actually. In fact, it just gives us the description with some stats. I was kind of going for... No, I'm not going to share it, so that doesn't remove the stats. Okay. Demons are one of the categories that definitely is a little too broad. So we are now in the theming department. I definitely think that it's got a demonic vibe going for it. Multiple mouths, no eyes. It's got eyes sort of nodding to the mostly underwater that the old gods are mostly based out around of. So, and it's got tentacles, so it's kind of fitting in that regard. I'm going with a 9, so fairly solid for its theming. It's pretty demonic looking, like, yeah. It's not getting a 10 exactly, partly because of the nation it's from, which is not exactly something to do with water. Albeit, Cthulhu myths do take place outside harbors and such, but if you look at a sort of a broad spectrum, even beyond just H.P. Lovecraft, there is a significant majority of stories taking place near or in water, or on islands that obviously are very close to water. So that theme it could have done better. It's got some blue stuff on it, it's got some ice, presumably, but yeah, not enough to... Actually, we're going down to 8, because there is something missing to get it up to that full Cthulhu demon god. However, for its general artwork, I'm giving it a 10. This is an excellent piece of artwork. It's detailed, it's gross, like, you can see the mouth, like, you're sort of, oh, there's a mouth, where's the eyes? Oh, there is no eyes, there's just another mouth, and another mouth. Where's the eyes? And you kind of looking at it, you kind of keep looking at it because you want to find the eyes, but at the same time you don't want to, because you don't want to find any more mouth. So, with that done, we are ending up for the Abhorath with a total 4 plus 8 plus 10. So we're up at a total of 22 out of a possible 25. Not a bad start, definitely not a bad start. Right, moving on. Acolyte. Okay, we already read the punny description. And this is less of a pun and more of a sort of ha-ha giggle. I think that for the sake of the name Acolyte, that is probably the best that you could come up with in terms of what it's actually from. So I'm going with a 5 because I don't see a way right off the top of my head that this could be improved. So yeah, 5 in description. Okay, the theming. So it says human and mystic. That's usually mystic is usually the tag that they slap on any spellcaster whatsoever. So can't really say much about that. Can this guy throw spells? Well, we don't know, but we may presume so. Again, some of the broadness of the categories is definitely not going to be a positive for these artwork, but I think this is pretty good. Like, you get the idea that this guy is not a high-ranking cultist guy, but he definitely is up there, and definitely isn't pleasant to look at. Could they given him something else than human? Possibly, but I think it actually is fitting that he is human for this. So yeah, I'm going with 9 for both general artwork and for its theming. So we're gonna end up at a total of 23 for this guy. Definitely a strong start. Agave. Oh, it has a weekly bonus. That's the one on the left there. Okay, so we got Agave, which is the name of a plant, name of a cactus, if I'm not mistaken. We're cheesy like queso. It's not the best. I will say that. First off, just because this guy is supposedly to be originating from what would essentially be Mexico, he does not really have anything to do with cheese. So that's kind of a misdemeanor on its name. I think the name Agave is fine because it's a plant and this is meant to be a living plant man of sorts. But the description here is definitely pulling it down. We're ending on a 3 because, like queso, there is some deeds to it. It could need a lot more work. There are probably better puns that could be made out of a plant like cactus man, like how prickly or something like that. See, I can make that up on the spot. We're cheesy like queso. Perhaps if this was a cheese guy, it's not. So it's only going to be a 3. Right. Next on is the theming. Elementals are a bit of a different kind to place because obviously they span across the elements. Now, Gems of War has 6 basic gems that you combine. Well, you don't combine them, but you match 3 or more, and then you go on and on and on. And each time you make a match, it gives power to one of your 4, 3 creatures and your hero with their weapon, and it sort of adds up to that. So elementals basically play into that as being a living embodiment of usually 1, but sometimes, not often, more of these elements. With purple being the element of magic, green being nature, brown being stone, red fire, yellow air, and what was the last one? So yellow, green, blue, purple, brown, red. Oh, that's it. So yeah, that's basically what everything is made out of. For its theming, can we get a little bit more? Yes, so here we can actually see a little bit more of the character than we actually can from the screen. Now, I don't know if that's because this is a quote-unquote smaller character, or because, if we go back... No, the positioning of the Acolyte is about the same. There is a little more detail with him than on the card, but it's about the same. I think the idea of Agave is a bit on the not exactly failing side, because the quality of the artwork is good. We're definitely landing on a 9. I do actually an 8. I do believe that it is a little too simplified with the amount of green, both for use at the staff and for the face. That could have done with perhaps more facial features, or perhaps just less plain green. I don't mind the brown cape or the red scarf, that's fine. Actually makes it stand out. But I think the theming is a bit weak. We're going with a 8 for the overall artwork and a 6 for the theming, because both Wildfolk and Elementals are way too broad for this, and that's going to hurt this. So, we're landing at a total of, let me see, 8 plus 6. That's 14 plus 3, so 17. Definitely the weakest of the 3 that we've had so far. Ahrimas. Okay, so he's a named character more than a generic sort of like town guard or something like that. The only knowledge that can hurt you is the knowledge you don't have. I'm not sure I feel that is like knowledge that you do have can definitely hurt you. Like there's plenty of ways it can do that. So he's just a mystic. He's not even an elf or anything like that. He looks like an elf. He could also be a vampire, so undead. But he's just a mystic. Okay, so he will be themed upon as following to that. His name is like Ahrimas. You could imagine easily having him sort of Ahrimas the Unfounded or something like that. Something you definitely get the vibe that this guy is evil. Like he's got skulls and all, crying out loud. That's not particularly difficult. So the name is good. Like it's not a name that you're sort of like but the description, the added bits, is kind of meh. I'm going with 3 again. Okay, so for artwork. Okay, so here we're actually getting into, despite the sort of flair that this character is giving off, I'm actually not too fond of this character as a piece of artwork. And that is largely because it's way too simplistic. Yes, there are lines of potentially metal on both his cuirass and on his gauntlets and on the groin flap, I'm going to call it. I don't know if that's what it's called, but there is essentially, this is just big splotches of simple paint. Like, even though there is a bit of lighting and such to them, like the most detail this guy has, that is around his face and his neck. That's not really enough. If the artwork was zoomed in closer to his face, well, then that would be what we're going for. But because there is so much of his body in the artwork, I'm going to have to sort of go in on that as part of the judgment, and that's not going to be very good. The theming, well, he lacks other than just being a mystic, and either he's a undead, could also be a demon, or he's an elf, judging by the ears. But he doesn't have that, so we can only categorize this guy as a mystic, and that's honestly fine. Like, he gets an 8 in that. The general artwork, I'm going to give him a 6. So once again, we're at 17. Okay, so the next one, Alastair. For a more humane form of dismemberment, flaming axes sever and cauterize in one easy stroke. Now I like that. I like that. He is shown to have a flaming axe, and the description says something about a flaming axe. That's nice. That's good. That's the way to do it. You don't describe a character with something that they don't have. Like describing this guy with, oh, he's great with a bow. What? That doesn't make sense, and it's not funny. He doesn't have a bow, and yeah. So it gets a 5 on that. I don't think you could possibly make a pun out of his name, like, what are you staring at? Something like that. But yeah, I think given the fact that the description actually fits the art, that's a good start. So we're giving it a 5 for the description. It's fine. Doesn't have to be any better, and generally that's all it is. Okay, artwork. And see, here it does this thing again. We have more of the artwork in the card than we do when we are sort of zoomed in, because it only zooms in on his face. Well, his upper torso and facial region. Right, I'll go back to the card. Okay, so there is actually a lot to take in here. So he is an undead knight. The undead part you can't really see, like this is a guy covered in armor. But, so he definitely fits the knight sort of armored character. I really like this guy's design. Like there is so much more life, which is strange coming on an undead, than there was with Ahrimas before. And you can see all the little details, like especially around the shoulder pauldrons, the helmet, and also the fact that there's a wrapping around his weapon for holding it. Those are small details, but that is exactly what Ahrimas lacks. And this is why I'm giving this a 10 in general art style. This is absolutely perfect. I love it. It gets an 8 in its theming, and that is because this guy could be anything. Like he could be an elf under that helm. He could be a goblin under that helm. You can't tell. So it doesn't really give the undead enough of playing into. And that's partly why I'm lowering it. So we're landing at a 23 once again. Not bad. Alchemist. Now this is an old one. This is one that has been here for a long while. I think it was one of the first cards that I actually got. But that's... maybe not. So, let's see what it says. A master of mixology. Just add parsley, rosemary, and thyme. So, yeah, they basically make a bartender joke about this guy. Or a spice cook, essentially. There are plenty of alchemist jokes that you can make. Why don't you transmute over here or something like that? I think it's fine. It's not as funny as they probably could have gone. I'm sure if I were to suddenly to actually sit down and think about it, I could make up something better than this, but this is fine. We're going with a 4 out of 5 for its description. Let's look at the artwork. Oh, that's not... see, this does the nice thing, so I can actually see the artwork here. And again, like Alastair, this is a very detailed character. And this is a very lively character. There's lots of details, there's lots of tiny little things that makes this character a lot more than just an old man with a book. Because if you were to make generic NPCs, like this guy is literally named as to be a generic NPC. But if you make him out to be more than just an old man with a book, you should do it like this artwork here. You can see, you can literally see from this artwork that this is a guy concentrating on reading something, possibly about the potion he's holding. Who knows? I think the theming of an alchemist is pretty good. They could have gotten more into it. This looks more like a guy reading a random, like a wizard perhaps, reading into what this potion does before actually using it, rather than someone, say, mixing the alchemical ingredients. So, it gets an 8. It's all right, but it's not the best. However, once again, I'll say that this is absolutely great artwork. So 10 out of 10. We're ending up with a total of 22. So not bad for the Alchemist. Okay. Algorak the Slayer. His favorite drink is Gatorade. There you go. That's the pun. That's it. That's nice. Well done. 5 out of 5. Okay, artwork. Okay, it's a big smoky crocodile with... So, why is this character better than Ahrimas? Well, it's simple. Even though there is perhaps less splotches of color here, due to the fact that there isn't really any clothes on, there is small amounts of detail almost everywhere. Like there are small notches in the fins, there are grime on the weapon, and on the gauntlets as well. And it just feels like a more fleshed out character because it's not as quote-unquote clean as Ahrimas was. So for the theming as Naga, now Naga is also a very, very broad category. It's basically everything that's vaguely snake, lizard or alligator like, but isn't a dragon. So yeah, I like the fact that this guy has a different style of weapon, despite, you know, having a fairly significant set of chompers. I think the theming is actually pretty good, so I'm going to go with a 9, and for the general artwork, I'm going with an 8. So that's totaled up. We are landing on a... Let's see, so that's 17. We're landing on 22. Not bad for Algorak. Amaru. Oh, we can actually view. So the description here is dead asp. Obviously, that's a play on dead ass. And while I do get the fact that yes, it's an aspen, which is sort of like an old word for a kind of a snake, viper. That is nice. And snakes, however, don't really have asses, so that ass is kind of... It works because it's a meme. And that's literally why, the only reason why I'm giving this 5 out of 5 on description. If I were to go back on my own word now, and that's not going to happen since I already started the recording, I could have gone and given it a lower overall score if I were to say that description was also a 10 out of 10 scale. Then this would definitely not score the highest, but on a 5 scale, that asp is fine. Artwork. Okay, so the theming of this. Now this is actually pretty strange because this is very clearly a snake, but it's not a naga. So that's okay. Not what I expected. I expected this to be a naga, actually, not just a beast. It is, however, from the Mist of Scales, which is where you'll find most nagas are from. I really like how detailed the scales are. Even though it's a very simple coloring, you get the feeling that this snake could slither up and be very pretty to look at, mesmerizing even. And I think the theming again is lacking, so I'm giving it a 7. For the overall artwork, given that a snake is a difficult medium to work with as an artwork because it's a long single one, you don't have big areas that needs to be filled out with, for example, muscles or anything like that, but you still need to pay attention because a snake isn't just a garden hose, like it does have some detail. And I think this comes across very nicely on here. So general artwork, I'm going to say what keeps it from being 10 is that I think the markings that were to go, that you see the pink swirls, are they meant to be roses or something like that? Possibly. I think it would have been better had they sort of kept to just the top side of the scale, so not the soft underbelly. And that's, again, everything here is subjective. So, yeah. I'm going with a 9 on general artwork. So, 9 for artwork, 7 for theming, and 5 for its description. So we're landing at a total of 21. Not bad, Amaru, not bad. Okay, what have we got next? Amira. She does the same, where she actually is more detailed on the card. A fox is just a wolf who sends flowers. I'm not entirely sure that I would go for that. Like, there are others that would definitely perhaps make more sense. She is meant to be a fox of sorts. That's the Vargara ordeal. That is basically everything that's partly humanoid and partly beast. That would go in the Vargara category. Rogue category, that's a very broad category as well. That's basically everyone that's not suited up in heavy armor and not likely to throw spells as their first choice. That's a rogue. Yeah, it is that broad. So the description isn't great. It's kind of So 3. For artwork, we get a bit of Amira's. What was his name? I've already forgotten him. Ahrimas. I was right. With the armor, well, the shirt per se, but what saves it here is actually partly the back hair and the scarf. Because look at how detailed that scarf is. Also the little details on the arm plating with sort of a notch that has been blanketed up and essentially kept from falling apart. I like that. That's attention to detail, and that's a really good thing for theming, for the overall artwork. The overall artwork is going up at 8. There are parts of it that could be better, but overall, yeah, it's pretty great. The theming, I think they could have done more with the theming. This is a very bright rogue. There are some of them that are more flamboyant, so they aren't the classic D&D rogue that stays in the shadows where almost all dark and brown, even though this is mostly brown. But there definitely is a bit more to it than that. I think it could have been done better overall. Like, this looks more like, if you were to colorize the armor more metallic, it would look like a soldier from a place where it was hot, but still being armored, and that would count as a knight. So, we're going with this 8 for theming. So, overall artwork is a 9. No, we said 8. So 8, 8, and 3. That's gonna land us at a total of 19. It seems so far that the named characters are doing worse than the more generic ones. Ancient Golem. Oh, he's a difficult character. So he doesn't look a day over 9,000. It's decently funny. There could be more on the pun side, but it's not... It's not completely missed the mark. So we're going with a 4 for description on this one. The theming of this. Now, golems are a difficult sort to put in. They could count as elementals. This one doesn't. So obviously the main thing is that it's not just a plain surface of rock. It is vaguely humanoid. And I think the attention to making the rocks look detailed is what sets this guy apart from everything else. So I'm going to say that both artwork and theming is actually 10, and so that's our highest scoring yet at 24. Ancient Horror. Now here's also one of the old cards that I've gotten. With a big old mouth and a hefty set of armored claws. And again we play a bit on the old gods and such, so forget those new age horrors. They got nothing on the ancient ones. That's a nice one. It fits the sort of ancient horror name. So again, had the description name part been of 10, it would not get full on that regard, but it definitely gets it on a 5 out of 5. So 5 for the description, move on, it's fine. Now, the theming of a demon. Now the first thing that pops into my head, and seeing as I'm the one doing the ranking, that's what matters, when I hear a demon is horns. And this guy definitely has horns, albeit on his shoulders and somewhat on his wings, but it works. And another thing that works for him, in my regard, is that the plating looks a mixture of stone and metal, and actually gives it that kind of old look to it, fitting the ancient once again. I'm gonna say that this guy is as close to ancient horror, yeah, I can definitely see that. We're landing on a 9 for theming. For general artwork, I think there could have been done more. A big mouth that's mostly empty, you could put more teeth in. The wings could have been more detailed and a bit bigger, perhaps. Like, this guy looks like he can't really fly, but he can hobble towards you and maybe jump over short distances and then claw you. I think that could have been done more, so we're going with an 8 of the overall art style. So 8, 8, and 5. We're landing on 21 for the ancient horror. Angry Mob. What do we want? More codes. When do we want them? Now. Okay, so that's actually kind of, at least for the time of this being recorded on Cyber Monday, kind of relevant. So I can kind of understand where this is getting at. Again, not the best. You could also go with something like, who rules? Mob rules. There you have it. So, it's a 4. It makes sense. It could be better for the description. Okay, for the artwork. So here is the first time we are dealing with more than one character. However, as it is the overall artwork, we're going to take them all as they are. Now, the 2 lower gentlemen are fine. Their artwork is pretty decent, and yeah, I think that's alright, given that it's just meant to be essentially a mob of peasants or lower class citizens basically standing up and going against whatever is coming to threaten their village. So the theming, angry mob, that's fine. Like, you could put more people in there, but then you'd lose out on detail, and yeah, I think this is basically as good as it gets with a depiction of a mob, especially considering that it's usually just one character on each of these cards. So I'm going with a 9 for its theming. For its general artwork, however, the larger gentleman in the back is kind of pulling it down a bit, and this is mostly due to how uncanny his very square or rectangular mouth is. Like, yes, the guy below has a very, very square chin, but that's fairly normal. Mouth for regular humans, in my mind, are at least not that square. So that's gonna pull it down a bit. And I also think that while the amount of detail on each character, not specifically in such things like hair, is nice, I do think that they kind of cheap-shotted it a bit with making two characters half bold, or at least all the way bold. So yeah, we're ending on a 7 for the overall artwork. Good, but with some uncanny vibes overall. So with that, we are landing at a 7 plus 9, that's 16, plus 4, we're landing on a flat 20 for the anchored up. Okay, what have we got here? Ankheht. Okay, and this is just an undead. This is not even a beast or anything like that. It could be, because it probably at one point was. So with undead creatures, okay, but let's go with the description first, since that's kind of the way that we've been doing all the others so far. I'm Sphinxy and I know it. Did you chuckle? I admit, I didn't, but I did kind of smile knowing what it was from. Albeit I don't like that song, but that's completely besides the point, even though this is a subjective list. I think, well, it is somewhat cat-like, but it's not. I think it could have been better. Like, it's like if it was a Sphinx and it had I'm Sphinxy and I know it. Okay, 5 out of 5. Go ahead, that's nice, you work. This seems kind of unrelated and more of a something vaguely desert related. And yeah, a bit too hastily. So we're ending up 4. I get where it's coming from, but it doesn't exactly fit. Okay, the theming, which is basically just undead with some gold plates. Now, it could have been made really, really simplistic, and that would not obviously be a great thing. But I think the fact that there is a keeping to the sort of both the desert theme and the undead theme, I think it actually fits in fairly well. I would perhaps want a beast slapped on with undead as well, but we're going with a 9 for theming. Now, for the artwork. So obviously undead like this don't have flesh that needs to be detailed, which can be a bit of a pitfall for some artists, because if you are depicting a skeleton, you are likely depicting something that's like bones, and if you are drawing it quickly, then it's basically pale bones with perhaps some shading if you're not that speedy, but ultimately it would just be a set of bones, perhaps in the shape of a humanoid, perhaps in a different shape. The fact that there is grime and dirt on this skeleton part, as well as the notches and scratch marks in the golden armor, makes this stand a bit stronger than just your average quote-unquote skeleton. So I'm going with a 9 for the general artwork. There are some things that could be a little more clear perhaps, but I think it's very close to being absolutely great. So we're landing at a total of 22 for Ankheht. Alright, the Anointed One. Here we have one of our first sort of grim characters, with plenty of grime and plenty of gore as well. But first, let's take the description. I am not Spartacus. Okay. So he is essentially... The pun here, well, the description here, I should say, is based upon the fact that he looks like a gladiator. But he is not a gladiator. And that's it. Then call him a gladiator. You're not getting the 5 out of 5 for the description. You're missing the mark. 4 out of 5. Close, no cigar. Okay, to the artwork itself. So this guy is a bit of a piece of work. He's got some blood splatter and actually a small wound himself, but that looks more like something he did basically just to inflict pain on himself to sort of get himself going. It looks a bit like he were taking on his belt buckle wrong and therefore got a scratch right where his left nipple is at. I think the theming Anointed One is kind of misplaced. He is definitely a grim character, but I don't think that he is as fitting for this gothic background that he is sort of representing. So yeah, not the strongest for that. We're going with a 7 out of 10 for theming. Now, general artwork. I was very close to saying this is a 10 out of 10. But then I noticed something about his left arm. Is he wearing a sleeve of sorts? Or is that a real fuzzy arm? I can't tell. And in that regard, I think it's a better choice to essentially leave that out completely. So, there are that, and the fact that the sword looks kind of short. I get that it's a one-handed weapon and he uses an axe in the other, but given that sort of flamberge edge that it has and how large the grip of the sword is, that sword is probably meant to be used with 2 hands. And albeit this guy looks muscular, he doesn't look like the guy who can swing a 2-handed sword and an axe at the same time. So we're going with a 9 out of 10 for general artwork. So 9 plus 7, that's 16. Plus 4, we're landing on a flat 20 for the Anointed One. Anthea. Okay, here we actually get where it's nice. So, the name of the description here, every rose has its thorn. Again, I get that named characters are a bit harder to make a pun out of than more general ones. And the fact that she is holding a bouquet of flowers definitely indicates that, you know, every rose has its thorn, and that seems to fit. But again, this is a sort of, I get what they were going for, but I think they missed the mark. 4 out of 5. Now, for the theming, we just got a mystic. Now, as I said before, mystics cover basically all kinds of spellcasters. The thing is, as a centaur of sorts, centaurs are a race that's in this, and that's going to get the theming a bit of a downpour, because she's definitely a centaur, or something similar, but she has not been aligned as such. So I'm going to give this an 8. There's overall theming that's fine, but the lack of a descriptive race more than just a class, that's going to get you a bit of a knack for it. Now, the general art, I really like this art style. This is very pretty. They've managed to get the detail in the lower body, in the fur. They've managed to get detail in the upper body. And they managed to get detail into something as important as hair. And this is a 10 out of 10 in general art style. So 10, 18, 10, 8, 4. We're looking at 22 for Anthea. Anubite Warrior. Once again, okay. He's been around for centuries, so stop calling him a Anubite. Ha! 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 There we go. That's the puns. That's on point. 5 out of 5. Nice. I like it. Okay, the theming. So, once again, we have a mystic. What is this mystic? Is this mystic a construct? Is this mystic undead? Is this mystic a human? Is this mystic a walker? We don't know! Is the helmet a mask? Is it his head? We don't know. So that's going to deduce a couple of points for the theming. And we're ending up at 8. Close to 10, because it could have been on point. You just need to tell me what this guy is. More than a mystic. There we go. So, the general artwork for this. I like this style. Again, it goes with the detail on a longer weapon's staff. So the sort of part where you're holding a weapon, a hilt on a sword. And it also manages to get good contrast, like the light blue on gold, or yellow essentially. That works out nicely. The only place where I could want some improvement on this would be in the head, because that fur is basically, it's essentially as close to one color as it can get. And with how much detail there is in his abdomen and in the rest of his headwear and his staff, and that's kind of disappointing. Like, no wrinkles, no nothing. That's basically just smoothed out of his, as if run through an acrylic folio. So that's not exactly great. And that's only a minor thing. Like, everything else apart from the head fur is fine. So we're ending at a 9. So 9, 8, 5. That is 22 for the Anubite Warrior. Apophisis. She has a hysterical laugh. Great. So here we got another category. Monster. Now, set 10 people up in a room and say, describe a monster. Chances are you would get maybe 2 or 3 that were similar, but basically you would get a different monster per person. This, while I don't disagree that a human with a snake's head is monstrous, the fact is that this game has humans, it has elves, it has naga, which is essentially snakes, lizards, as we spoke about before. So why not make it a combination of naga, elf, or human? You have those options available. It's not like you needed to have monster in just to describe this. So while the pun is good... Oh, this is for theming. So the pun, yeah, 5 out of 5. No problem there. Go ahead. The theming is bad. This is not a class. And this is not a race. This is just a monster! Like, If it was dark and you heard something rustling in your backyard and it turned out to be a hedgehog, you could say monster about it. You'd be wrong. This is wrong. So, given how striking, I would say, this flaw is, I'm going to say that this theming gets deduced an extra point, so we're down to 7. The overall artwork, however, is actually pretty good. There's detail in the staff, there's detail in the cloth, and not just plain smooth lines. Like you can see there are notches and bits that are missing from the headdress, as well as from the gold lining, the simple dress running down the crotch flap. So, and the scales of the head does not look like they've been smoothed out with a layer of Vaseline. So, yeah, I'm going to say that this is a 9 out of 10 for general artwork. So, 9 plus 7, that's 16, plus 5, that's 21. Apothecary. Again, more than meets the eye. Again, here we have a descriptor that goes for describing the artwork rather than the name or making a pun of the name. I know that to some female dwarves it's kind of a sin to give female dwarves beard. I don't mind it. It's a matter of saying if it's in the world, then so be it. So, but that's about theming later. More than meets the eye. I don't think that's as fitting a description as they think that it is. We're going with a 3 out of 5 because I feel that that's missed the mark. It's based solely around the look. And that's not really what you want. Like, you want to be able to sort of make the pun to describe the picture without seeing the picture. So, yeah. Alright, theming. So, a dwarf. Well, actually, she's just a mystic. Oh, she's also a dwarf. Okay. Hold on. Yeah, so you see here that Anthea was a centaur. Okay. She will get 1 more point then, because that was kind of unfair to just say that she wasn't anything. So they were actually... Oh, she's undead? Okay. Okay, so I have to look at both of these for this. Okay. Essentially, that's because the split part of it, the true class, well, class and race, is something that they have added later on. It wasn't there from the start, right? From the start, they didn't even have a class or even a race moniker. Then they added, I think, races first, and eventually added classes and such to it afterwards. And the rules about it is still a bit fuzzy, to say the least. So, let's go back to this. So the theming is... it's alright. It suffers a bit from the fact that this is a kind of a boring character. We had the Alchemist before, who was essentially just an old man with a book and a potion, but he looked a whole lot more interesting than this Apothecary. And that's a bit of a shame. I think the theming could have gone a little harder. Like, this looks like a noble woman with potions or perfumes, perhaps. So the Apothecary gets a 8 out of 10 for theming. Now, the overall artwork is a bit boring. That's a shame. It's not bad, but it's boring. There's not a lot of color variation. There's not a lot of detail. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it per se, but it's not a very living piece of artwork. It's very, very stale. And that's going to bring it down. So we're going for 7 for overall artwork. So 7, 8, and 3. That will land us at 18. Arachnaean Watcher. Okay, is he more on... No, it's about the same. So he's an elf and a knight. So he is basically... He's quite the huntsman. That is actually a good one. At first it's sort of like, but he's not a hunter, he's... But what is a huntsman? Is a type of a spider. So, yeah, that's a 5 out of 5 on the description. Nice work. The theming. I'm not sure that this guy wasn't named. Like, you see this guy, you definitely don't expect to see, like, a unit of these guys. Given how much detail there is to his armor, and his eyes for that matter, you'd expect this guy to have a name. So I think this is, like, obviously it goes partly over the descriptor, but I'm gonna say this is for the theming essentially. I think that could have been done better. So that's going to be an 8 out of 10. General artwork. Okay. Generally, when making plate armor, you either go for grime, so that you can add a lot of detail to a piece of armor, or you go for very shiny. This, I mean, at least that's sort of like if you want to show off. Here, apart from a few scratches in the shoulder portions, there's not really a lot to go on, and the cloth wearing beneath is just not... Yes, there are shoulder blades poking up, but, I mean, you could color them in anyway, and they still wouldn't add much to the overall drawing. It's kind of boring, actually. Yes, the sword is fairly detailed, but again, this just, like, the gauntlets are just plain. The armor is plain. Like, there isn't really much to do with this guy. So, yeah, I'm going with an 8. So 8 and 8, that's 16. Plus 5, that's 23. Surprisingly high, but I mean, I think it's overall pretty decent. Okay. Arachnataur. We found the ugly elf. Again, I don't think this went on the name of it. So we're going for a 3 on the description. It doesn't say much other than, yeah, it's an elf, that checks out. Ugly, that's a matter of, is that elf ugly? I've seen worse. Okay, the theming, Arachnataur. That sounds like the mixture of a arachnid, so a spider. Well, it could also be a scorpion. Scorpions are also arachnids. Or daddy longlegs that are also arachnids, but not spiders. I think it fits. Like, it's an Arachnataur, so you kind of expect Minotaur, Centaur, and a spider. And you got that. Sure, there are other fantasy creatures where spider plus elf is available, but that's not what this guy is named. I actually think that it went, for the sake of theming, I'd say that this actually fits what you like. You hear Arachnataur and you kind of expect something like this. So yeah, I'm going with a 9 out of 10. Because it doesn't fit the name completely. Like Arachnataur, you kind of semi-get the, at least I do, the mixture between a spider and a horse, or a spider and a minotaur, so a spider and a bull. And that's a bit different than what this is. So for the overall artwork, that's going to be a 9. I genuinely like most of this. Most of this. Now, with other characters, there was the sort of, this is very much a bland kind of coloring. The Arachnataur, it would actually suffer a bit from the same idea if it weren't for the fact that the fur on the lower part is very, very detailed. I don't see why it was necessary to add the purple claws and the purple spots on the shoulders, abdomen, and hair. Just make it brown. Like, it fits for the eyes, yes, but I don't feel it was necessary to add them onto the claws either. So we're going with 9, 9, and 3. So 21 for the Arachnataur. Aransi the Guardian. So a named spider here. Mom says I spend too much time on the web. Bingo! See, it's not hard. That was a named character and you managed to make a spider pun. Nice work. 5 out of 5. Good. Moving on. So, here we got a monster knight. And knight is basically anything that's slapped on with armor plating. Sometimes with a mount, sometimes not. But that's basically how this game says, you're a knight. Okay? I think it's actually kind of neat. Like, the plating does fit a spider. I mean, I would personally wear some protective gear for the eyes, but well, I am not a spider in need of armor, so I don't know if that is something that it requires. I like the detail of the armoring. It kind of gets that spidery sense. And while you could argue that the carapace of a spider is fairly hard on its own, well, you can squish a spider, can you not? At least most spiders. So, yeah, I can get that it would need some extra plating. I'm going with a 9 out of 10 for the theming. It's almost there. I could see some improvement that would make it a bit more like someone riding a spider, perhaps. Or be a bit more, quote-unquote, knightly. General artwork. Again, it's a 9. I don't see why the purple is needed for the mandibles. Everything else with this spider is actually as it should be. So 9, 9, 5. We're ending on 24. Close for Aransi the Guardian. Arcanus. Technically, he is a Caped Crusader. Is he, he's an elf. He looks more human, I gotta say. Doesn't have pointy ears. Well, technically, he is a Caped Crusader. Again, that's the description that fits more for the artwork. It's not a complete miss of a mark because Crusader is a type of knight. And it's not blaringly going in the wrong direction of where the knight is going. So I'm gonna say 4 out of 5. It's not as punny as it could be, but it's not bad. Okay, theming. So I think this is the only elf that doesn't have pointy ears. And even though this game has lots of different artists, I think a general sort of consensus is that elves have pointy ears. Now the framing of the body is a bit harder to place. It does look more human than elfish, like it looks a bit more broad-shouldered, a bit more muscular, less lithe and agile. So I'm gonna say that's an 8, simply because there's a misnomer either on whoever says that's an elf, or on the person drawing it with the description, draw an elf. Either of those people, or perhaps both, did not do their job. So the overall artwork. It attempts to be more flashy. The cape is nice. There's that. But the armor and sword kind of suffers from not really being all that impressive. I mean, yes, it's glowing, but it's kind of taking away from the fact, like, this is a sort of a bells and whistles kind of thing. Like, it has so many glowing things that you kind of miss the parts that aren't glowing. But, well, I'm able to look past it, and it's kind of bland, so we're going for an 8 on the general artwork as well. So 8, 8, and 4, that is 20. Yes, it is. Math. Archdruid. See, here's definitely pointy ears. Okay. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Elveline. Okay, I get what they were going for. I have heard better memes, like, yes, obviously I get the Maybelline meme. I don't necessarily think that it fits the Archdruid that much. Like, go for something with plants, perhaps, instead. Like, this is more elf in general. There are plenty of elves in this game. You could have gone for any of those instead. So, again, it's not in the completely wrong direction. It's just used on the wrong character. 4 out of 5 for the description. Okay, the theming. So, I kind of like this. This is a nice piece of artwork. It manages to actually be lively, even though it basically only has one color, and that is green. Like we saw before with the Apothecary, that was one color, and that was brown. That character was very, very stale. Now, why is the Archdruid not stale, then? Well, part of it is because of the amount of detail that is in the green dress. And that's not just the accents that was, because the Apothecary had accents as well, which was, fine, but it didn't stand out to make the character more lively. Here, the accents, which is mainly the brown, is used nicely. And I think it certainly does help that it's not a bland and straightforward character. So, yes, I'll say that the theming here is on point. We're going with 10 out of 10. Overall artwork. Can you tell me if her scars are part of her eyebrows, or if her eyebrows are part of the scars? Now you ponder on that for a minute. Okay, done pondering? So, that's really my only gripe with this character. I like the crown, like, This is a druid's crown. It's simple, it's naturey, it's not completely symmetric. Perfect, nice, go on. The bits of armor, again, light, looks like wood, fitting. Why are the scars in the same color as her eyebrows? If they were going for war paint, surely any other color would have done. And it's not like the eyebrows don't fit with the hair, because they do. And from how smooth the cheeks look, I don't think that it's scars, which means that it's very likely that it is war paint. In which case, why make it green? Or at least, why that green? There are a myriad of palettes of other colors of green that could have been used. That would make it stand out. Now it stands out looking like a kind of weird mixture between a clown that went lost and a wood elf. And that's not what they were going for, so 9 out of 10 the general artwork. Not much, but there is that small gripe with the eyebrows, / scars, / war paint. So, 9 plus 10 plus 4, that's 23. Not bad at all. Archon Statue. Here we once again have a construct, so the need to show wear and tear is important. And I think that they got that down. So for theming, I don't see anything wrong with this. It's a 10 out of 10 for theming. Don't blink. I happen to know what that is from. That is from Doctor Who, and the what's it? Is it Stone Angels or something like that? Anyway, it's statues that basically, when you blink, they come at you. As long as you look at them, they can't move. Again, if the statue had been named Angel or something like that, I could understand it because that's a direct reference. But as a rule, if the description, as punny and referential as it may be, goes towards the look of the artwork alone, that is kind of missing the mark, at least in my book. So that's going to be a 4 out of 5. I get the reference, it's not a complete miss, but it doesn't quite hit the absolute top. Okay, so all that's left is the general artwork for this guy. I like it. It's a statue, but it's got details. Like, it looks like it has seen some wear and tear. It's been standing out and guarding some kind of entry hall for a long, long time. You could potentially argue that with a little bit of moss and perhaps some dust on top of it, it would be perfect. But I think it's actually pretty much where it needs to be. So yeah, 9 out of 10. Small improvements could be made. I would like some more detail. Perhaps less color, actually. Going for a more plain stone look, but more detail. So yeah, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 4 out of 10. That's 23 once again. Arctic Fox. Okay, damn it, Moon. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Moon is a wolf or a Siberian husky. So not a fox. As such, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I get the reference. It misses what it's about. You don't expect to see a fox when you see the description, damn it, Moon. So, that's what it is. This is a difficult piece. Arctic Fox, so... I think it fits its theming nicely. It's a beast, yes, so, I mean, we can't really do much more than that. 10 out of 10 on the theming. You could have made it wrong, you didn't, so at least there's that. Overall artwork. Okay, this is a tricky one because it's, again, we are dealing in a situation where it's practically almost white. So the danger here is obviously a lack of detail. Now, there are some fairly large splotches that could have had more detail, but at the same time I understand why like you risk making it taking too much time putting effort into those details for what is essentially a minor character. But again, the splotches are a bit... The longer you sort of stare at the Arctic Fox like this, the more obvious it becomes. So, 9 out of 10. Close, but there's room for improvement. So, 9, 10, and 4, that's another 23. Haven't had anyone that sort of screamed all bad just yet. We've had some lows, yes, but we definitely have, and we haven't hit 25 just yet, but we might. Arcturion, okay. Demon, or just a space rock? I don't think that's really a very good descriptor. Like, it doesn't really do much. Again, it tries to explain the picture. Don't do that. So, yeah, we're going for a 3 out of 5 because it's kind of not there. Like, yes, you can see what it is, but eh. Does it look demonic? For theming? I think so, yeah, I definitely think so. It's got horns, which is, again, as mentioned, the first thing that comes to mind when thinking demons. I like the fact that they're going with ice for this demon, without going for, like, this is not a Cthulhu-like demon. This is a more like, think D&D, think the 9 Hells kind of demon. Now, the layers of the 9 Hells in D&D also include, actually two or more layers that are bound in ice. So in that regard, I feel that this is very fitting. Yeah, I don't really see anything wrong with the theming, so we're going for 9 out of 10. It's not completely perfect. It's definitely not the first thing that comes to mind when thinking demon, but it's close. It's close. Okay, the overall art style. This one is a little tricky, but it's actually going fairly low because it's overly simplified. It's way too smooth. There's almost no notches, and apart from surface levels of ice that's covering it, it doesn't really have any specific details other than around its mouth. That's kind of lacking, so we're going with a 7. So 7, 9, and 3. We're looking at 19. Okay, seeing as how long the video is getting so far, and we're still at A, we're only going to do A for this video. Then I'm going to do the rest of the videos, well, the rest of the letters, in separate videos thereafter. Maybe 2 letters in one, depending on if there's only like a single one or two. But definitely A is in its own category. Argos. Okay. So he's a mystic. Wildfolk, yes. Where's Jason? Now that is a reference to the quest for the Golden Fleece and the Argonauts. In that regard, given his name is Argos, and it doesn't go on his appearance, that's good. And I think Argos is a little harder to make a pun out of, so given that, we're going with 5 out of 5 for its description. Okay, so the theming. A mystic centaur, well, wildfolk. That's Pan, satyrs, and such. I think it's pretty much on point. So, yeah, I honestly don't see anything wrong with it. 10 out of 10 for theming. So, the overall artwork. Honestly, I like it. I don't see anything that sort of stands out as being against what I've already spoken about. It has details on the hilt of the weapon, the fur is detailed, the hair is detailed, the gems are detailed, the plants wrapping around it is detailed, and it doesn't have that flashy attempt to sort of cover other things up in flash, essentially. So, yeah, I'm actually going to give it a 10 out of 10. So our first highest hitter is Argos, reaching all 25 points. Nice. Armored Boar. Okay, Hakuna Matata. Yes, so I don't even need to explain why that is a good description. Obviously, when people get that into their heads, there are, well, likely 3 potential creatures that show up in their heads. It's either Pumbaa, Timon, or Simba. And for me, out of those 3, Pumbaa is my favorite, so Hakuna Matata naturally brings the image of Pumbaa up in my mind. That's it. Pumbaa is not a boar. He is a wildebeest. No, not a wildebeest. What is that called? But essentially, like, boars are more like that. The depiction of the creature is a boar, no doubt about it. Yeah, I'm definitely going with 5 out of 5 for the description. So the theming, an armored boar. Yep. Oh, that fits. Like, it's a boar with armor on. Not much else to say there. And this even looks like it could be ridden. Like, the back part of the armor definitely looks like a saddle of sorts. Yeah, I'm going with 10 out of 10 for its theming. So, what's left is the artwork itself. Now, given the mass of this boar, its legs are rather scrawny. And while I don't discount the fact that a lot of musculature sits around the shoulder of a boar, you'd still need quite the muscle mass to carry something around, especially if you were to sort of charge into battle. So basically an autonomy fail, essentially. We're going with 8 out of 10 for theming, so 8, 10, and 5. That is a 23. Armored Boarlet? Pig in an armored blanket. I mean, yeah, it's on point, but it doesn't really. It's not as funny as it could be. So I'm going to say 4 out of 5 for the description. The theming. I wouldn't call that armored. Yes, it has more quote-unquote armor than a regular boar, but I don't think that it's very on point. I think it's a kind of a cheap knockoff of the previous one, which is also part of theming, like, do they connect with other of similar look? This one doesn't. It looks a bit too cartoony. We're going with 7 out of 10 for theming. So the overall artwork, the armor is not really very greatly detailed here. And for a creature named Armored, that's not a good look. It also seems like, at least to me, that the amount of detail on the fur, the bristles, is lacking. Like, there's not a lot of detail. You got a whole splotch on the underbelly fur that's basically not colored. It's just a splotch with an outline. The same goes for the leftmost inner thigh. And the armor plating is lacking in detail as well. We're going for another 7 out of 10. No, actually 6 out of 10. There's definitely room for improvement. So 6 plus 7, that's 13. Plus 4, that's 17. Artema. Okay. She's not horsing around. Nice. Nice. That's a 5 out of 5 on the description. I love puns. Okay, so the theming. So obviously she is named after the Greek god of the hunt, Artemis. And while I might say that a bow would perhaps be more fitting for a hunter, like that's typically what you'd get an image in your mind of, hunters, especially if you're hunting boar, you don't want to be using a bow that's basically not going to be doing anything. You want to be using something heavier, like a spear. So in that regard, I actually think that her being a centaur, named after Artemis, the god of the hunt, goddess of the hunt, this is a great theming. 10 out of 10. I like it. Nicely done. So, artwork. Again, we got gripe, we got notches, we got scars, and we got detail on the weapon and hair. And I love the war paint, and it's not the same as the eyebrow. And yeah, you can even, like this, the amount of detail, especially on the bracer and her holding the shield, and there's just like, this is why I love this game, because you get artwork like this and Argos. This looks great, and I'm getting a 10 out of 10, so that's another 25. Okay, moving on. Asha. Because dragons needed more fireballs. Okay. I can see what they were going for. Not really the most fitting. But, so a 4 out of 5 for the description. Could be better. But I see what they were going for. Okay, theming. So she's a dragon mystic. I mean, that seems to be fitting alright. Yeah, I don't see what could be missing or ill-fitting for this. I think that it's a good fit, relatively speaking. So 9 out of 10. I would perhaps like to have seen perhaps a little more scales, perhaps some wings. Small detail, not affecting the overall art, but this is more theming wise. Okay, overall art style. This is a great piece of art. It's got flourish, it's got flash, it's got clothes, it's got accent, it's got detail on the face, and it's got details on nitpicks, like the gemstone keeping the cowl together, the small beads by the belt itself, for that matter. I'm going with a 10 out of 10 for art style on this one. So 10, 9, and 4. We're looking at another 23. Astral Spirit. She likes to be in the dead centaur. Did I mention that I love puns? Because I love puns. Okay, so 5 out of 5, definitely. I would give it almost be inclined to give it more, but that would kind of break my entire system of ranking, so let's not do that. Okay, the theming. Astral Spirit. Well, Astral Spirit in itself doesn't really describe, because spirits are usually ethereal of some sort, albeit not connected to the stars as an astral would be. Could be a centaur, but it could basically be anything. Like, you don't gain from the fact that it's called an Astral Spirit that it's in fact a centaur. And an undead, but that's... You do get the undead part, but that's not the prime thing that you look at. I think it's fine. 9 out of 10 on theming. It could have been done better, but it's not bad. Overall art style. So, it tried to do something more with the main body color, which would be to splot in a couple of white dots and dashes here and there. I don't think it did enough. It's very much one coloration. Like, if they went more for the coloration that the hair had for most of the body, that would have been better. It also looks like the horns have sort of been added on as a sort of like an afterthought, like, oh, centaurs have horns, she should have horns, add horns, but I'm already done with the painting, add horns, okay. They don't look like they belong on this piece of artwork. And there is another character later on, I don't exactly remember where, but there is another character later on where a similar idea is present, and it's kind of off-putting, to be honest. I do, however, like the feather and crystals mix for armor and clothing, and it's one of the few female characters that doesn't show a lot of cleavage or bust. It does, yes, but I think in a respectable wild folk kind of way. So the overall, it tanks because there is so much of the light blue and it could have used a lot more detail. We're going for an 8 out of 10. So 8, 9, and 5. That is a total of 22. Not bad. Not bad at all. Yeah, this is what I spoke about with the cleavage. Okay, the description is level 90 Hunter, full Apex LFG. I get what they were going for. And It might just be me being old and crotchety, but I hate that sort of epic late 360 no-scope kind of vibe. So yeah, definitely not a fan of that. So for that, I'm going with a. I see what they were going for. I don't like it. 3 out of 5 on the theming, on the description. Okay, her name is Atlanta. She's a rogue. Well, rangers are not a class in this. They are usually rogues, if they are even classed at all. I think the theming is fine. I am definitely feeling that this is less of a rogue and more of a ranger kind of character. So I'm going to say that that's an 8 out of 10 for theming. Now the overall art style. I don't think that a character that isn't described as trying to be a seductress would benefit from showing cleavage like that. Now, I know none of these have an actual description, like there isn't lore or anything like that. There is a bit, but not very much. I don't think Atlanta is that kind of a character. So, there's also the fact that there's something about her face that I don't like. I do like most of her clothing. It would probably be better if she closed her boob window. But especially the accent on her pauldrons is actually pretty good. I'm going with a 7 out of 10 for overall art style. So, 7, 8, and 3. We are looking at 18 for Atlanta. Aurai. This is a bit of an unusual one. We found him in a blind forest. That's a call out to Aurai and the Blind Forest, obviously closely resembling in name. Other than that, I don't think there is anything that connects this character to Aurai. So I'm going for a 4 out of 5. I get what they were going for. They missed the mark on the description, but they tried. And they didn't exactly miss, but they didn't hit either. Okay, it's theme. So this is a fae and a beast. Now here we're dealing with a very brightly colored, very contrasting creature. It has red and light green as its main colorations. And I think that it sort of sums up the fae idea kind of nicely, in that it's very colorful, very lightly magic. And yeah, that is actually pretty good. So 10 out of 10 on the theme. Okay, the overall art style. Now, with a creature like this, horse creatures, when showing the belly, there is a high chance, or risk essentially, of it being a very patchy kind of artwork. So, a piece where you'd find splotches of one color and not a lot of detail. This one does actually not fall into that pitfall. It could, however, use a bit more detail on its mane and whatever you'd call that hair. I think the effort put into that is kind of lacking, and it's not because the artist couldn't. Like, you can see the amount of detail on the fur around its face, that detail seems to be sort of disappearing as the hair trails downward. That's pretty odd. Like, if it had had that detail, or that amount of detail, all the way down, it would have been perfect. So we're looking at a 9 out of 10 on the overall artwork. Close, but room for improvement. Finish up that detailing and you got that 10, but not today. So, 9, 10, and 4. Yes. So, that's another 23. I have a feeling that a lot of them is going to be looking in that, around that area. Which says something for the game. Like, this game features so much art. Most of it, almost all of it, is good. There are a few misses along the way, but given that this game currently, as of the 30th of November 2021, has more than 1,000 different monsters, it is acceptable that not everything is completely up on point, especially since this game is free. I don't know where you can acquire it at the moment, but yeah, I don't think it's pay to play wherever it is. Okay, next one. Autumnal Imp. The only weapon he is afraid of is a leaf blower. Ha 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 ha. That's actually pretty good. It's not as punny as it perhaps could be. Like, you could go for something like, you don't want to be here when he falls. Something like that. Like, you could play on that. I think it's decent. And I will say that given the scale, it's a 5 out of 5. Like, you basically have to not miss to get the 5 out of 5, or to not describe what your character is. And Autumnal Imp, like, okay, as soon as someone here fall or autumn, that's just depending on where you are, basically, what type of English you're speaking, you very likely get that orange, brown, and yellow leaves thought in your head. And that's without describing the picture. So it doesn't break that rule. So 4 out of 5 out of 5, yeah. Okay, its theme. So it's very much going for the tree theme, which it's elemental, so is anything else than elemental? No, it actually isn't. I think this is also one of the more recent ones that have been added. I think it is perhaps a bit more tree than it's actually imp-ish. So I will go for a 9 out of 10. Could play a bit more into the imp part, less into the tree part perhaps, to make it more obvious. But it's close. Okay, so for the overall art style, in general, I like it. It has a lot of detail going for it. It retains like a main sort of brown color, but it manages to go into detail with variations of brown. And that's a good sign. And this one actually manages to do an excellent job of depicting not just a piece of wood in the autumn, but also a living creature, an inherently magical creature of the autumn. So I'm going with a 10 out of 10 on the art style. It's very nicely done. So 10, 9, 4, 10, 9, 5, yeah. So 24. It's pretty good, pretty good. Avina. See, okay, let's go over the description first. She is one of the major stakeholders in the not-for-profit group Humans Against Vampires. Okay, it's a bit long. Like, I would just go for she's one of our major stakeholders and cut it there. Jokes, puns and jokes that get too long often end up losing the listeners because you have to maintain their focus. They have to be sort of like, you have to be quick about it, so the pun is still sort of lingering. Like a long-lasting pun, it takes effort, and given how short the descriptions generally are for this one is a bit long. But it is punny, it does hit the mark, 5 out of 5. Okay. The theming. She is essentially a vampire hunter. She's not even a rogue, even though this is exactly the kind of description that would be fitting a rogue. I think there are plenty of depictions of vampire hunters, and they come in many shapes. It's not just the Alucard. So I think, like Avina, she's a human. Like, she isn't even... The fact that she is not a rogue kind of actually goes against her. So the lack of a class here is actually what brings her down a bit. But given how broad they are, I'm going to say that it's not a big down. We're going for 9 out of 10 on theming. Now the artwork. I really like this artwork, because it actually does what Atlanta did wrong. It does that right. Here's a character that's meant to be light and easy to move around, not in a situation where she combines open chest with armor. This is basically just a bodice with a leather coat, I think, and some flashy cloth pauldrons, so they don't actually offer any protection. So she's all about movement, essentially. I really like her eyes. Like the thick eyeliner there actually goes to suit this character better, and the fact that she isn't dolled up with makeup and lipstick actually suits this character even better. Another thing that works great for this is the accent of the leather coat. Silver on brown, or in this case sort of brown leather, works tremendously, especially when it's a sort of a toned down silver. So not a bright and very shiny silver, but sort of a toned down, but still in the sort of kind of fancy kind of way. 10 out of 10, lovely artwork, nice. 10 plus 9 plus 5, we're getting 24 for Avina. Okay, Axolotl. You sure Axolotl questions? I sure do. And you get a 5 on that on the scale for that. Okay, a 5 for that. Right, what else have we got? It's a beast, yes. Merfolk. I am not entirely sure that it needs that. Beasts are essentially, well, beast creatures. And I don't think, like, this is not depicted as a clever and sentient being. Sure, it can probably think and act on its natural instincts, but I don't see this as a part of society other than perhaps a protector or a pet or something like that. So here I'm going to say that it's actually been overclassified. So it's going to be pulled down, and we're going to say 8 out of 10 for theming. Okay, the artwork. Now I have seen axolotls in aquariums, and they're usually two-tone in their skin without much detail to that skin. So it's going to be a harder creature to match. I think that it has actually been done well. See, unlike a horse or a other furred creature where you would have a sort of fur surface, bristle or not, axolotls don't have fur. And the scales that they do have are very, very tiny and very, very smooth. So obviously, a monster depiction of an axolotl is going to have to fit that look. I think that is actually done nicely. What I don't understand is why does it have a unicorn horn? Again, much like the horns on the Astral Spirit, this horn looks like it has been tacked on after the fact. And I don't see why it needed that. So I'm going to say, for the sake of the horn, if it did not have the horn, I would have given it top marks on the general artwork. But because it does have a horn that it clearly didn't have from the get-go, I'm going to say 9 out of 10 on the artwork. So 9 plus 8 plus 5, that is 22. Okay, the last two. Aziris. He killed the last living eagle-fant to get that helmet. Okay, this goes again. So again, this goes on the. It actually hits the. It does hit the. I am describing what the picture looks like, but it does describe it well. So I'm going to say 4 out of 5. It's not completely there. It's close, but not completely there. Okay. He is an undead mystic. Now, unlike with Alastair, I think the theming here is very clear. This guy is, like Alastair, covered in cloth, and we don't see a face. But we do see a sort of open cavity where there perhaps once was a chest or an abdomen. And it's probably safe to assume that that is bones. Do we see more in the small? No, we don't. So it's kind of hard to gauge more from that. I'm going to say that they actually hit the marks on this one. 10 out of 10 for the theming. Okay, the artwork. There are perhaps a little too much purple. So, again, and the armor platings, especially the pauldrons, they have no notches. It's a purely polished surface. And now, I don't know about you, but a thing that have lied undead and silent beneath a desert for, let's just say, 100 years or more. Do you think that there's someone who goes, perhaps monthly, and polishes up old armor pieces like that? I don't. And I definitely don't think it would be as smooth as it is. So, while the theming was on point, I think the artwork is a bit of, yeah, just make it shiny and people will think that it's good. It's good artwork. It's not perfect. I'm going for an 8 out of 10. So 8, 10, and 4. That is 22. Alright, last one with A. Azura. Merfolk and Mystic. Can see more of her like this, but... Okay. I want to be where the people are. Okay, that's a Little Mermaid reference. That's... It's not bad. Not exactly hitting the mark either. 4 out of 5. Okay, the theming. She is a mystic, so expected a staff or something like that. And merfolk, yeah, fins, gills, scales. That is very much clear to see, so I'm going to say that the theming is on point for Azura, our last hit on this. The art style, however. The staff, albeit the head of it is nice, the hilt is very simplistic. And it does the same as the Astral Spirit in that it tries to go in a direction where not everything is just this bluish purple splotch. I get that it's meant to be water dynamic, but why then have scales on the breasts? Why not have scales all over the torso? It seems kind of weird. So while the shoulder parts and the hair dressing definitely looks cool, and the right arm detail is also nice, there is room for improvement here. And we're going for an 8 out of 10. So, our final for all of the monsters beginning with A available to me, we're going for 8 on the artwork, 10 on the theming, 4 on the description. That's a 22, and that will be the last for this episode. So, in the next episode, we will take on the monsters beginning with a B and go through them meticulously as I've done so far. I know that I said at the beginning that I was going to go through all of them. I still am. It's just not going to be in one video, because I am honestly getting a bit tired at the moment, despite having 2 cups of coffee while making this video. So, in the next one we shall go for B. But until then, take care.